So thank you very much for the talk. I really enjoyed that. But
Thank
one
you.
thing I'm really concerned about in the UK that I feel is not really being talked about is the demographic change that is occurring within the UK. So according to the Professor of Demography at the University of Oxford, David Coleman, Indigenous white Brits are expected to become a minority in their own country by 2066, especially with Theresa May secretly signing the UN Global Compact for Migration in late 2018, which calls for the replacement migration of untold millions of economic migrants who cannot integrate into British culture. Unlike the state of Israel for the Jewish people, there is no safe haven white people can go to once they're a minority within the UK. We can use London as a case study for how the country will become from this, as London has now become a minority white British population of just 45%. Islamic grooming gangs are now running rampant across the UK. For example, 1,400 almost exclusively white girls in Rotherham, some as young as 8, were groomed and gang raped by predominantly Pakistani grooming gangs from 1997 to 2013, and the council and the police refused to investigate these in fear of being called a racist. Furthermore, there are huge discrepancies and overrepresentations within crime statistics within ethnic minority groups in the country, and this is a result of intentional mass immigration, which was no accident, mainly as a result of Tony Blair's government, who was in an alleged Mossad agent, paedophile and blackmailer Jeffrey Epstein's now notorious Black Book. So my questions to you are, do you accept, yes or no, that there is an intentional white demographic replacement taking place within the UK? And if so, do you think Britain will become more or less like Britain the less ethnically white this country gets?
No.
But do you not feel that all this stuff is intentional? Do you not feel
No.
that all this?
I mean, so you asked me, yes or no? So I tried. So I tried to answer in
No,
one.
I understand. Thank you for answering it.
I mean, I think there's a number of assumptions that you made there with which I disagree. First being that immigrants are incapable of assimilating. And I don't think that is a fear that every society has, but that actually very rarely turns out to be true. I mean, obviously, you know, if you're looking at the Anglo-Saxon invasion or something, but in a modern organized society, I mean, Boris Johnson is descended from immigrants. I don't think anyone would say that his family has failed to integrate, right? He's descended, you know, I was born in another country. You know, maybe I don't fit in here, but I feel pretty patriotic about the place, right? So, I mean, I don't think that I don't think it is impossible. And particularly in our country, I think Britain has always had a civil rather than an ethnic conception of nationhood. If you look back at the army that won the Great War on our behalf, it looked, I would say, a lot more like the Britain of 2018 than like the Britain of 1918. It was full, in other words, of young men who had been prepared to cross half the world in order to fight for a country which in many cases they'd never set eyes on because they believed in its values. And there's a reason why people want to come here. People don't think of what's involved in each individual migratory story. You're leaving behind friends and family, language, familiarity. You don't go through all of that to go to a country that you think's a bit crap, right? I mean, you're making a great vote of confidence in the country that you're choosing to come to. So I don't accept that assimilation is impossible, and I don't accept that nationality is defined by physiognomy. I mean, I think Britain is capable. There are plenty of people who are capable of becoming patriotic and useful British citizens despite their grandparents having been born somewhere else. Where I do think there is a problem is in the barriers thrown up by multiculti liberals in this country that make assimilation more difficult. So having, as I said, having come here from somewhere else, generally you've done so in a positive frame of mind, right? You want to make a success of your life. This is the usual story of most migrants in most places. But then if you land in a country whose sense of patriotism has been systematically derided and traduced by its own intellectual elites, it is much harder to find something that you want to integrate into. Take the examples of some of the things you were talking about: religious extremism, British-born kids, who have ended up in militias in Iraq or Syria or whatever. Right? The people who have been so alienated by the nationality of the country that they were born in that they've been prepared to take up arms against it or become terrorists. Right? I wonder whether we should look at the life stories of some of those kids and look at what experiences they had. If they got any history at all in school, if they got any British history at all, it will have been presented to them as a hateful chronicle of racism and exploitation. Most of their interactions with the British state will have taught them to despise it. All of the ideology, especially at local level, will have been, if you like, that Britishness is a shameful brand. If that's and in fact, by the way, that may be linked to the way in which a number of English and Scottish and Welsh voters are groping back towards, if you like, older identities that don't have this image problem. But where does that leave you if your parents came from, I don't know, Bangladesh or Iraq or whatever, right? Some people in that category, if they don't have a patriotic British brand that they want to buy into, in the way that those young men had in 1918, are going to start casting around for an alternative identity that feels stronger. The capacity of a country to absorb migration while maintaining its essential character. Of course, it is true on some level that every new arrival brings something. Of course, that's right. Ronald Reagan used to say, "Every immigrant makes America more American." So yes, you will see some changes in the gestalt of a country, we might call it, the texture of the country. There'll be different cuisine. There'll be, but sticking with America for a second, every generation of Americans, without exception, going right back to the Republic, has had the same attitude to immigration, which is, yeah, it's all been great up until now, but this time it's different. It's all been fine, but just, wait until and there's always been some new factor. Yeah, but up until now they were all from the British Isles. Well, yeah, but up until now they were all Protestants. Oh, yeah, but up until now they were all white. And yet it carries on being a pretty darn successful country. And the reason it does is because it is able to have an expansive and assertive sense of nationality that allows newcomers to want to belong to something. And the expressions of American patriotism that make the Euro snobs shudder, the bunting and the flags and the songs, are precisely what makes it easy for newcomers and their kids to feel that they belong. And if we are serious about maintaining the character, the free and rule-based character of this country and all of the things that we admire, we should be more proud and patriotic about celebrating them so that every child in a British school, wherever their grandparents were from, feels a sense of the wonder and privilege of being part of this extraordinary polity. I think we've got to take a couple more. I'm sorry, I've given you plenty of time, but if you don't mind, thank you.